Special night. My wife Nancy is here. Nancy, stand up. I'm just waiting. Stand up. I'm going to introduce you to my son Matthew, who's really quite famous, but he's not the only famous one in the family. Nancy is mayor of College Station, Texas. You know, to receive an award for oneself would be wonderful. But tonight, it's my son who's receiving the award, and that's even more wonderful. Nancy and I are very proud of Matthew, as we are of our other son, Jonathan, the younger son. We're not only proud of his success, but we're proud of the kind of person he is. As a parent, you want your children to be healthy, you want them to be happy, and you want them to grow up to be fine adults, good people. And Matthew's succeeded in all of those levels. What I want to say before bringing Matthew up here tonight about him, that he's not likely to say for himself, is he's the most determined person I've ever known, family or no family. Matthew Berry is the most determined individual I've ever known in my life. When he decides that he wants to do something, when he decides that he wants to achieve something, when he decides that he wants to go someplace, he just does it. It may take months or years, but he gets there. In like sophomore year of high school, he got interested in radio, and he started hanging around our local radio stations. He wanted to be a disc jockey. He told me, "Dad, that's what I'm going to do in my career. I'm going to be a radio disc jockey. I'm going to play music. I love music." And this kid just kept hanging around, and finally we let him work the overnight shift. And then finally he got on the radio when people were actually listening, when somebody had to go on vacation. By a senior in high school, he had his show, Matthew Rock and Roll Berry, which was the #1 rated radio show in our town. And Nancy and I let him do it as long as he kept his grades up, which he did. He worked 7 to 12, Monday through Friday, and made A's at school, and played on the tennis team. And then he decided, with his love for radio, that he was going to go to Syracuse University. He just announced it one day in our home. "Mom and Dad, I decided I'm going to Syracuse." Why Syracuse? Well, he'd done his homework and he learned that they had the Newhouse School of Communications. What he decided was the best broadcasting school in the nation, and that's where he was going to go to further his career in radio. And he went to Syracuse, and in Syracuse he discovered television. So it's no longer radio, now it was on the television. And he created with his fellow students original TV programming at Syracuse for their television station. And in fact, is now in the Syracuse Newhouse School Hall of Fame. From Syracuse, after graduating, he decided that he was going to be a comedy writer in television. And so we went out to Los Angeles, no contacts, no network, to break into comedy writing and television. Virtually an impossible thing to do if you're starting from scratch. And it took years. He worked in retail and did odd jobs, and then started on a TV show where he actually brought lunch to the writers. But eventually he was a writer and wound up with the honor of writing the 250th celebration special airing of the Married with Children show, he and his writing partner. But while he was working in Los Angeles in television, he also wrote several movie scripts. He always had in the back of his mind this love for sports. And it started when he was a little kid, when Nancy and I would take our sons to all the Aggie games. We saw a lot of Aggie games, some with good outcomes and some not so good. But it was what we did as a family. And he followed that passion for sports. He's going to tell you the rest of the story in just a minute. That led to his current position as the lead of fantasy sports at ESPN, where he's been for 7 or 8 years now. In our local television news show, the 10 o'clock news, it always starts with the line, "Do you know where your children? Do you know where your children are?" Yes, your local television news show does the same. And in our household, when we hear that, Nancy and I look at each other if we're in the sunroom and we grin, and one of us says, "Yes, we know where Matthew is. He's on television." Every day, he's on television, he's on radio, he's on all the different ESPN platforms. And it's really fun for us to, during pro football season, at 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday mornings, to turn on ESPN2 just to see what our son is wearing and make sure he looks good and make sure he looks healthy, he looks happy. We may not watch the whole show, son, but we do check you out. We do check you out. Yeah. So Matthew, come on up here. Your mom and I are very proud of you, son. Matthew Barrett.
Let's hear it from my dad. Kind of a marketing legend. Say so myself. Thanks, Pop. That was awesome. So, AMS Marketer of the Year. Thank you very much for the award. I'm very honored. I share it with many people. It is weird for me to be the Marketer of the Year because I'm not a marketer. I am a marketer's son, however. You all know my father. Just spoke about me. You know my mom, so it's great to be here in front of them and many of their longtime friends and names that I've heard and people I've known over my year. I was told to keep my speech about an hour 15, so that's cool, right? Or settle in, order another round of drinks. My dad mentioned it. I love sports. I've loved sports my entire life. We went to Aggie games. I can't remember a time when I wasn't watching a game, collecting baseball cards, had a helmet on my head, and playing tackle football with my kid brother, who was literally the only kid I could tackle. I was a runty kid for a while. But when I was 14 years old, I found this weird little green book called Rotisserie League Baseball, and I picked it up, and I started playing. I got invited into a league when I was 14 years old. In 1999, I loved it. In 1999, there was a website called RotoWorld, and this is back in the days of AOL and CompuServe, and you dialed up to the internet, and like you checked it maybe once a day. But there was this website, and they were advertising for fantasy writers. It was a new website, and they said we wanted, and it was a site I was on all the time, and they said we're looking for writers. So I wrote them, and I said, I'm a professional writer out of Hollywood, but fantasy sports is my passion. can I try out, can I write you a column on the side, something, can I send you a sample? And they wrote me back the next day and said, we looked you up on IMDb. Married with Children is our favorite show of all time. You're hired. So thanks to Al Bundy, I got a shot at being a fantasy sports expert. So I developed the following. On Roto-World, I think I'm a decent writer. Fans seemed to respond to what I was doing. In 2004, people were starting to make money on the internet. And again, so I decided to start my own website. Again, thinking, hey, it's just something on the side, just kind of a goofy little thing. Now, growing up with a marketing professor who specializes in marketing services and customer service may not seem like a lot. We didn't get into all the cool clubs. Jay-Z didn't pop by to hang out, drink bottles of pop. But it did have its benefits. So in creating my own website, called it talentedmrroto.com, that was my nickname. Worst URL in history, talentedmrroto.com. It was like talented Mr. MRRO. There was 2 R's, like it was long, it was bulky. Wonder why it was still available. But I created that site, and I used tons of customer service lessons from my father. So we had a rule, a ton of them, but we had a rule that if you emailed the site, you got a response within 24 hours. That was what we blared that to everyone. Which back in those days, it's still actually a big thing, but back in those days, especially in fantasy sports world, that was unheard of. Internally, our rule was for our customer service people that they had to respond within 6 hours. So just a typical Len Berry thing, under promise, over deliver. And fans love that when they got an email a couple hours later when they were expecting one a day later. Wow the customer, right? Wow the customer. Every message board post got answered. We guaranteed if you posted on our message board, somebody would answer, and it would be one of our designated experts. And we basically try to create a grassroots community, right? I'm a big believer that no journey is alone. And so we tried to make it a community. I would designate, when I would see a kid on the message board that I thought was good, I would call them a designated poster. You got the TMR seal of approval. And so you were guaranteed an answer by a designated poster. And the designated posters had office hours, literally where they had to be on the message board answering everything they could. And people wanted to answer more message board posts because they wanted to be a designated poster. They wanted that little badge by their name. And when somebody was really good after a year or so, or 2 years on the message board, we retired their number. And we had a little ceremony on the site. We had a little icon where we put their name, whatever their avatar and their name was, and we retired their number. So we made it a community. We hired from within. People on the message boards, if they were good, they got a job as a columnist on the site. So I did a daily email blog where I sent an email to people every single day. All throughout it, I kept 2 lessons my dad taught me in mind. Brand aware, brand trust. All I wanted to do was brand aware, brand trust. I started the site with $12,000 of my own money, and I didn't go out and raise money, didn't do any VC funding or anything like that. So I knew that the only way that I could promote the site was me and my content and the guys that I wrote. So I went to every radio station I could find, every TV station I could find, every website I could find. I said, I will come on your air for free. I will write for you for free. Just mention the website. Brand aware. Just mention the website. And then everyone on the site got to drill down to them in daily emails from me. You got to respond to posts. Got to post on the message board. We're doing chats every night. Brand trust, so that they knew when they came to the site, they knew what to expect, and we would deliver on that promise. In 2006, one of the places obviously that I started doing promotion for the website was ESPN. It was a natural, obviously, and in 2000 they liked some of the work I did for them, and in 2006 they bought my website and hired me as their senior director of fantasy sports. So I got to ESPN, and one of the challenges, one of my marching orders was to help us become #1 in fantasy sports, specifically fantasy football, which is the biggest sport of them all, but become #1 in fantasy sports in revenue, users, and industry perception. At the time, ESPN was 3rd. CBS, Sportsline, and Yahoo were far ahead of ESPN. And ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, wasn't used to being the third place guy in sports. So it was a big challenge for us, and as we looked at it, and a lot of people at ESPN, a lot of people working very hard on this and giving me the support and working with me and doing more than I did, and really amazing. But as we sat there and talked about it, the big conversation, the big question was, all right, well, how do we get people to switch from Yahoo and CBS over to ESPN? And I'm a big believer in play the hand you're dealt, right? Don't try to be something you're not. Look at your assets and play those. Do what you can. And what I said and what we discussed in meetings is, I was like, guys, listen, there's nothing wrong with those sites. Yahoo and CBS Sportsline, they're good sites. And the way a fantasy user works is that once you set up your league on a site, you don't tend to move sites. Like you have your league history there, people are used to it, it's hard to get people to switch. And I said, instead of beating our heads against the wall, trying to figure out how to get people to switch and get a bigger piece of the pie, why don't we just grow the pie? Like, one of our assets is, okay, we're third in fantasy, I get that, but we're also ESPN. And if you're a fan of sports, chances are you're going to interact with ESPN at some point. So instead of trying to get people to switch, people that play fantasy to switch, let's just try to convince sports fans to play fantasy. That's got to be easier. So we needed to do that, and we got buy-in, and everyone agreed that was sort of the plan to do it. But in order to do that, we needed to change the perception of fantasy. It was kind of considered very nerdy. The stereotype was, the overweight kid wearing all black in his mom's basement, right? That was our poster child. So we needed to bring fantasy mainstream, and people were concerned about that, and I said, I don't think it's a tough sell. I remember saying this at a meeting. I said, look, I'm not a weird guy. I promise. I said, I like Bruce Springsteen. I like going to Vegas. I like pizza. I like superhero movies. Like the stuff that I like, everyone likes. Like I don't like weird, offshoot, avant-garde stuff. Like I am super mainstream, and I also happen to love fantasy sports and fantasy football. So my belief is that it's not a weird thing. So I think if we promote what works, the camaraderie of fantasy sports, and joining together with your friends, the competition against your friends, talking trash, the fact that it gives you a rooting interest in games that you otherwise would not care about, and the fact that it's fun. I mean, it's fun. I do a bunch of interviews, and people ask me, why is fantasy sports so popular? Why is fantasy football so popular? And I'm like, because it's fun. People like fun. Like, it's not hard, And since we just gotta make people realize that it's fun. And one of the ways we did that is we had to just make it cool. So we got everyone on ESPN, all of our Sports Center anchors, all of our Monday Night Football announcers to play fantasy. Hey, we want you to play in a league. And just talk about it. And then it became something, it's like, we just gotta make it something cool, something that guys do. Guys like going to Vegas, they like gambling, they like fast cars, they all fill out a March Madness bracket. And they have a fantasy football team. It's going to be something that guys do. We just need to make it something that guys do. And then once we can get guys doing it, then we can go after women, after kids, after grandmas, after everyone. One of the other things in terms of play the hand you're dealt is that if I can convince, or ESPN can convince one person to play fantasy sports, he needs 9 other people to do it with him. So instead of trying to get 10 people, let's just get one person and make it easy for that person to acquire 9 other customers for us. More lessons from my father, right? If I get one guy, he's grabbing 9 for us, and now we've got 10. So let's make it easy. Along the way, so many things, like, I certainly don't want to take credit. I'm passionate about fantasy football, I'm passionate about sports, but obviously a lot of people are, and the growth and popularity of fantasy football happened because of a lot of different things and a lot of different people. Obviously the increases in technology, the fact that you can play it on the phone, that you can play it on your computer, that you can play it on your tablet now, that's helped it incredibly, lower the barrier to entry. Once ESPN and other major media companies got on board with it, once ESPN started promoting it, and the NFL, and the NBA, and then MLB, and the sports leagues got behind it, professional sports leagues got behind it, just sort of took off. Today, according to the Fantasy Sports Trade Association and Ipsos research, in 2013, there were over 33.5 million people playing fantasy sports in the United States. There's an estimated 3.1 million fantasy sports players in Canada as well. So, almost 37 million in North America. So I think we got there. Some of you, I'm guessing, just out of curiosity, how many people in the room actually play fantasy football or some fantasy sports? Can I see a show of hands? More than I thought, not enough. The rest of you have homework. What I thought I would do is show you one of the some of the reasons why that fantasy sports is so popular. I wrote a book last summer called Fantasy Life. It was well received, and one of the things I said to them was I want to write a fantasy sports book that I can pitch on The View. And they're like, what? They said, well, that's sort of what I do, is try to bring it mainstream. And I said, I don't want to talk nerds and stats and everything like that. I just want to talk about people, because ultimately what fantasy football is, it's about people. It's about bringing people together. It's about, I'm still in the same league that I was when I was 14 years old. I'm still in my first fantasy football league, which is all the guys I went to college with. Without that, I wouldn't have kept in touch with them. And what makes it so great is what people do in their leagues. So this guy lost his league, and he is holding his iPhone case for the next year because he finished last in his league. We have a lot. There's so much fun and creativity, and these are some of the things that are in my book. The loser of this league had to take a shirtless selfie and post it to social media. This guy's cube, covered in tinfoil. This is how he has to work for the next 2 weeks. Don't finish last. This guy had to take a belly shot out of the guy with the hairiest belly in the league. I wonder if the face is from the booze or the belly. Ask me how my fantasy football team did. Chad face. He's in a dress on one of the busiest corners in his city. Having to stand next to the champ, of course. Embarrassing outfits are prevalent. You can't read what the sign says. It says, I sucked at fantasy football. And this was posted to his entire league's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This guy had to go to a party. Don't finish last in your league. This is the winner of his league, and everyone in their league has to post this picture in their house for a year. In a prominent spot. This guy had to get a Friar Tuck haircut. This guy lost. He lives. He's the last place loser in the Panda League out of Northern Virginia, and he's getting prepared to get his punishment, which is a pierced belly button. The Panda League. And I'm hoping this will work. I'm a little technology, but I think this will. And then there's this that we featured on ESPN this past year. Can you guys hear that? Is that
Put the
the sound?
microphone. Put the microphone to the
iPad.
iPad.
There you go. I'm going to put the microphone to the... Perfect. Super smart.
Good job, Helen.
Legend has it that there was a conversation amongst macho men one night claiming that my fantasy team is better than yours. And as that goes, after a few beers, things escalate, of course. And I think something said in jest when woken up on that Saturday or Sunday morning, what started as a joke is now all too real.
My name is Spudman. My team name is Manifest Destiny, and I am one of the co-founders of the Notorious Tattoo League.
In our league, whoever loses gets a tattoo of the winner's choosing. The only thing that the loser gets to decide is where the tattoo is placed on their body.
But your body is your temple, right? You choose everything that's on it. But when someone loses, they're going to have to get a tattoo by the winner. So the winner has to come up with a good tattoo idea.
So in year 1, it is this tattoo. That is a unicorn. In year 2, that is a Care Bear T-bowing. In year 3, that is Justin Bieber. You may not be able to see, it says Fantasy Loser, hashtag YOLO swag. For the rest of his life. Now, these 3 stories came out with the book Fantasy Life last summer. And you saw the video that we just did on ESPN that sort of introduced the league. We actually showed a number of videos over the course of the year following that league there in Omaha, Nebraska, trying to figure out who was going to get the tattoo this year. So we featured them. The story got a lot of play out of the book. And in addition, the 3 guys that have the 3 tattoos, that have these 3 tattoos, went on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. So this past year, the loser this past January had to get this tattoo chosen by the winner. And in true fantasy karma fashion, the guy that had won the league the previous 2 years, that made somebody get a Justin Bieber tattoo, that made somebody get the T-bowing Care Bear, lost this year. So you can imagine the league really wanted something horrible for this guy. And this is what they came up with. That is, it says fantasy twerker, and twerker is crossed out, fantasy loser. It is the Miley Cyrus wrecking ball with me on it in the Miley Cyrus outfit on Jay Leno's face on the wrecking ball. Some poor kid in Omaha, Nebraska has a tattoo of me on his leg. Now, I have to say, I really thought somebody putting a tattoo of me on their leg would be the highest honor I would ever get. But I believe this tops it. Throughout my career, I have tried to be loyal to those that have helped me, to make those that took a chance on me be proud of their decision, and to leave fantasy sports and fantasy football specifically better than I found it. By honoring me with the Marketer of the Year award, you not only humble and honor me, you honor all of those that have taken a leap of faith on me throughout my career. You honor Dan Okrent and the founding fathers of Rotisserie League Baseball. You honor John Walsh, John Kozner, and all the people at ESPN who championed fantasy and worked so hard on it for so many years. You honor the NFL, NBA, MLB, and all the sports league who have promoted the game. You honor everyone who's ever worked in the fantasy sports industry. Frankly, you honor everyone who is a commissioner, who set up a league and invited 9 guys for the first time to try it. You honor everyone who's ever played, even the tattoo guys. You honor my father, and on behalf of all of them, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you very much.
Matthew is very humble. Last summer, we were in Denver, and he was appearing at Dave & Buster's for a book signing. At that point in time, his book, Fantasy Life, was number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list. And we were standing in line, and it was out the door, way out. We kind of wade our way in. Matthew looks up, he's very cognizant of what's going on. He sees us, and he goes like this. But then we watched him in action. I have never seen anybody who was so amazingly, he's got to have a photographic memory, because people would ask him about draft picks, very obscure draft picks. And Matthew could tell them the stats on each and every individual they asked about. So this 45-minute, which turned into 50-minute, which turned into an hour Q&A, was unbelievably entertaining, funny. The Married with Children served him well. His photographic memory serves him well. His homework and his attention to detail serves him well. And I can't think that we've had a better Marketer of the Year than Matthew Berry. So once again, Matthew, thank you very much.